and very likely could go down based on what scouts and the media and everyone is hyping him up to be one of the greatest players ever. I mean, if he becomes everything that people say that he's going to be, he might go down as the greatest player ever, which is crazy to think about. But I mean, look at LeBron James. LeBron James was the biggest prospect, most hyped prospect ever in history. Came into the league, and he's arguably the greatest player ever. In many people's eyes, he is the greatest player ever. And now you got Victor Wembanyama with his incredible talents, things that he's able to do with his size, his skill set, all of these intangibles we've never really seen on a prospect like this. So I do understand and get the hype. But when it comes to a player like this, there are still a lot of concerns, right? He's very frail as far as his just stature, his height and size usually doesn't bode well over longevity. So how long is his career going to be? Even if he does become the greatest player ever, how long is that stretch for? Many people believe that within 3 years, he'll be the best player in the league, both on offense and defense. If that really is the case, then wow, watch out. The San Antonio Spurs are really going to have maybe a potential new dynasty on their hands. But there's still definitely concerns. How will he translate? We've seen a lot of really great, really talented players that are extremely hyped come to the league and not really have the success that they were projected to have, or like somebody like Zion who just has injury history and is not able to live up to that hype. But when you're talking about Victor, let's say all things go well. Who is off the table when it comes to a potential trade for Victor Wembanyama? Based on reports, Victor Wembanyama is worth $500 million to a franchise. That is a lot of money, just from a business perspective, which the NBA is a business, right? And if Victor Wembanyama does develop into the projection that he is supposed to be, then there's not a player in the league that is off the table for Victor Wembanyama. But in the reality and the time that we are in now, because we can't see the future, you're hoping that he becomes even a top 20 player all time, would be majorly successful, right? So let's go on the assumption that he's going to be a great player. Maybe he will be one of the best players in the league in the next 3 years. Who would you trade and who wouldn't you trade for Victor Wembanyama? Now, starting with the big man, right? Because Victor Wembanyama is a big man. He's going to end up playing the center or the power forward position. And when you're talking about big men, right now the league is running rampant with them, right? You got Nikola Jokic, Joel Embiid, Giannis. You have Anthony Davis, who he's played great. But out of these four sort of star center, star big men, who would be untouchable? Now, in my opinion, and of course, I want to hear yours, so let me know down in the comment section below. But in my opinion, I think the only two that I would not trade Victor Wembanyama for are Nikola Jokic and Giannis. That's it. Anthony Davis, and I'm a Laker fan. I love the Lakers. I love Anthony Davis. I hear all the talks about how the Lakers need to trade Anthony Davis, and I continuously defend and say, no, you cannot trade Anthony Davis. But Victor Wembanyama, if he has that projection of being this elite two-way player, then you got to take it. Look, I love Anthony Davis, but his injury history, as well as just his disappearing act at times on the offensive end, his lack of consistency is a real issue. If you could basically get a younger, healthier, more maybe killer instinct level Anthony Davis and Victor Wembanyama, why wouldn't you do that? So if that was ever an offer that was on the table and you could trade Anthony Davis for Victor, I would do that in a heartbeat. And then Joel Embiid. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, he's the MVP, right? He's the guy. But here's the thing, couple things to that. One, injury history again. Two, he hasn't really won anything. He's never gotten out of the second round. Three, he's completely disappeared at times in the playoffs on numerous occasions. And how trustworthy, how good is he as your main guy going forward, right? I mean, Philly very well might end up trading him this offseason because it looks like James Harden is leaving. If that happens, they just fired the coach. Is Joel Embiid going to want to stick around for a retooling when there's no real stars that they could add this offseason? They don't have a ton of tradable assets to go get a guy. The whole trust the process thing. Undoubtedly, Joel Embiid is one of the best players in the league. But if you could hit that reset button as Philadelphia and have, again, a Victor Wembanyama and like maybe a Maxey to build around for the future, I would do that 10 times out of 10. Joel Embiid hasn't been able to prove himself. He's proven that he's a great regular season player, but he hasn't been able to prove that he could take you over the top. He's only getting up there in age. And the reason Giannis and Nikola, Joker, the reason I wouldn't trade them is because when Giannis already is the best player on the planet, you already know what you're going to get with Giannis. He's won an NBA championship. He's proven that he's a guy that can lead a team to a championship. He's always shown up in the playoffs. It did kind of feel like he regressed a little bit this year in the playoffs against Miami, but how much of that was just the injury? Regardless, Giannis is still young enough to where you probably have him at an elite level for at least the next 5 years, if not longer. Nikola Jokic is still young enough and talented enough, and two-time MVP is very likely and in pure position to win an NBA championship this year. And so if that happens, then he's the guy that's led a team to an NBA championship with Jamal Murray as his second best player. That bodes pretty well, right? So those are the two big men that I wouldn't trade for Victor Wembanyama. Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, I think you make that trade. Then LeBron James, Kevin Durant. Now, a lot of people compare Victor Wembanyama to LeBron James, right? And LeBron James has lived up to that hype. But if you have the opportunity to trade LeBron James for Victor Wembanyama, you do that every day, including Sunday, right? And it's not because LeBron James, LeBron James, again, is arguably the greatest player ever. But he's in year 20, 38 years old. At this point, if we're talking about this point in their careers, there's no question. You take Victor Wembanyama, you make that trade, and you get that done. I think that's simple. I think anybody would do that. Kevin Durant, same thing. Kevin Durant is a great player, but he's never led a team to an NBA championship. He's more of a number two in many ways than he is a number one guy. He's not that leader. He's not that alpha. He's said it himself. He has said himself, I am not a leader. That was words out of his mouth, right? He is only getting older, has tons of injury history. He's been very injury prone. I think if the Phoenix Suns could trade Kevin Durant for Victor Wembanyama, I think you do that immediately, right? I don't think either of these two would be off the table in that type of trade, just because, again, Victor Wembanyama, his upside, his talent, his age, all of those factors, I think, are just far greater if you're a franchise in your organization than these two. Luka Doncic. Now, there is a real argument to be made that, yes, you trade Luka for Victor Wembanyama, because if Victor Wembanyama does become the guy that he's supposed to be, then Luka is not going to be anywhere in that stratosphere, right? But Luka, what we have seen from Luka so far, I think you absolutely keep Luka Doncic. Again, he hasn't won a championship. He's led a team to the Western Conference Finals, so he almost got there, but he hasn't actually been able to get over the hump. But he is still very young and has a ton of upside and talent, right? 24 years old, doesn't really provide much on the defensive end, so that's a real concern. But he is an offense in and of himself. He is already a top 3 to 5 player in the league, so you don't have any questions, right? Because again, with Victor, there are still those question marks, like will he be able to be a top 5 guy, right? And with Luka, he's already that, and you would imagine, is only going to improve and only going to get better. And in 3 years, you would at worst still have probably a top 5 guy. Now, if Victor's the number 1 guy in the league, well then, it's like, but not everybody can have the number 1 guy in the league, right? Goes to one team. So I would personally keep Luka Doncic over Victor Wembanyama. I just think Luka is a guy that has already proven what he's capable of. The only concern, and I think the biggest argument for trading Luka, is can he win with others? Because he is so ball dominant, because he is so controlling of the basketball, there are real concerns with another star or him playing alongside another elite talent, right? So far, Dallas, it's been pretty much him and a bunch of really, decent role guys, right? And the idea is you take Luka, you take a bunch of 3-and-D guys, and Luka's good enough to generate and be so ball dominant that he can lead you to the promised land. But that's a real concern. Victor Wembanyama, at least from the looks of it, appears to be a guy that you could have another star alongside, right? Because he's a guy that is going to need setup. He's a guy that, yes, you can give the ball to and he could just go to work, but his ability to pass the ball, his height, and be able to see over the defense and stuff, I think Victor would very likely work well with another star. So that's a big concern with Luka. Can Luka, because we saw with the Kyrie thing, they were worse when Luka and Kyrie were on the court together than when they were individually off the court, right? Like when one was on the court, they were actually really good. When the other one was on the court, they were actually really good. When they were both on the court, they were really bad. And that is a real concern. Luka, I believe you have to have like a Kevin Durant, a guy who's not going to demand the ball, but can still get you 25 a night on efficiency, right? He doesn't need 30 shots to go get you 20 to 25 points. That's what I think you need alongside Luka, but I would probably keep Luka and not make that trade. Steph Curry. Now, the Golden State Warriors, if you're Golden State, you do not trade Steph Curry. If that deal was on the table right now, you would not trade Steph Curry. Because of everything that Steph Curry means to that organization, everything that he has done for that organization, you do not trade Victor Wembanyama for Steph Curry. Now, from a unbiased perspective, you trade Victor Wembanyama for Steph Curry. Steph Curry is still an incredible talent. Top 5, top 10 guy, wherever you have him, as far as, stature in the league. But he's 35 years old. There's still a lot of questions about his injury, right? He hasn't had the best injury history as of late. And how much longer can he be this level and this great of Steph Curry? Maybe 3 more years? Okay, that's great. Well, now he's 38 years old, where Victor Wembanyama would be 22 years old. And again, if Victor Wembanyama becomes anywhere close to what he's projected to be, then you're talking about an elite two-way player. Now, Steph Curry is an elite scorer. He is not an elite two-way player, never has been. And again, with his age and all the factors that are in place, I think you trade Steph Curry immediately for Victor Wembanyama. Again, the Warriors would not do it, and they shouldn't do it. But if you were ever going to hit that reset button on the Golden State Warriors and trade Steph Curry, Victor Wembanyama is probably the player that you would do that for. Right? I mean, there's not really many guys better as far as prospects go. But again, Steph Curry is untouchable. I want to make that clear for Golden State. He is untouchable. But when you remove that bias of like Golden State and everything about, like, let's say Steph Curry asked to be traded, right? And you could have almost anybody in the league. I would trade him for Victor Wembanyama. Like, right? So, again, these are all hypotheticals. Spurs aren't going to trade Victor Wembanyama, but it's the idea of, like, who would be untouchable. I don't believe that Steph should be untouchable if you are from an unbiased perspective. Now, again, from Golden State's perspective, he would be untouchable. But Jason Tatum, it's the last guy I want to kind of talk about. Kind of, again, wanted to kind of go through the top guys in the league, top 5, top 10 guys. I did leave some off the books, but I just think that they're easy. Like Booker, Devin Booker's a guy that you can mention. Trae Young, guys like that. I would trade those guys. I think that that's an obvious thing. Jason Tatum, I think, is not as obvious. But if you're the Boston Celtics and the Spurs hit you up and say, hey, we'll trade you Victor Wembanyama for Jason Tatum, I would not hesitate in the slightest to trade Jason Tatum for Victor Wembanyama. Now, Jason Tatum is an absolute incredible talent. Don't get me wrong. He is still extremely young at 25 years old. He has been a big reason why the Boston Celtics have been so consistent and have been basically a lock in the Eastern Conference Finals every year for the last 5 or 6 years. Jason Tatum has been absolutely remarkable. He is an incredible talent, but the problem is he's not the alpha that the Celtics need. Jaylen Brown is, but Jaylen Brown isn't as talented as Jason Tatum. If you could take Jason Tatum and give him Jaylen Brown's mentality, I think Jason Tatum might potentially be the best player in the league. Problem is he doesn't. Jason Tatum is far too passive, disappears constantly. I mean, look at this playoff run. He's nowhere to be found. He'll have 30 points at the end of the third quarter and then just doesn't take a shot in the fourth quarter, and you're their best guy. You're their closer. You're the guy that's supposed to be the man, right? That's the problem, right? If you could go get Victor Wembanyama and add him to this Boston Celtics team and keep Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart and everyone else, like imagine a starting five of like Marcus Smart, let's say, White, let's go Jaylen Brown, Victor Wembanyama, and Time Lord, right? Robert Williams. How do you score on that team, for one? And two, if Victor Wembanyama becomes the offensive player that many people believe he will be, you're going to get the offensive production and the defensive production that Jason Tatum provides, right? That's the thing that Jason Tatum is good at, right? You got the defense, you got the offense. He's a great two-way player. But if Victor Wembanyama can provide that and be that dog, be that guy alongside Jaylen Brown, I would do that, again, all day long, right? Because, again, at some point, you're going to have to make a decision. The way that Boston's shaping up, Boston's going to have to get rid of Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, very likely. They'll probably get rid of Jaylen Brown is probably what it is, because Jaylen Brown kind of wants to be the guy and wants to go to his own team. But if you could get Victor Wembanyama for Jason Tatum, I would personally do it. I think we have seen enough over the years for Jason Tatum to say, okay, like he's not the one guy, but he's too talented to not be the one guy. And Jaylen Brown isn't quite there to be the one guy. So if you could go and get a guy like Victor Wembanyama who could be the one guy, then perfect. It's a great situation. Both parties win. And I think Boston's off to the races and have a real chance to win an NBA championship. Now, maybe Jason Tatum in the next 3 years or so develops into that guy and has that killer instinct and becomes that, right? We've seen a lot of guys, once they get to 27, 28, that's when they start becoming that guy. So maybe Jason Tatum does become that guy in the next couple years. But at that point, Jaylen Brown or Victor Wembanyama might already be the best player on the planet based on what the projections are. So if you have to wait 3 years for Jason Tatum to evolve into that guy, but you can go get Victor Wembanyama and he can evolve into that guy, you'd have a 22-year-old who's that guy rather than a 28-year-old. So I just think if you have an opportunity to trade Jason Tatum for Victor, I would do it personally. But anyway, Victor Wembanyama, regardless, we will see. This kid has a world of pressure on his shoulders, and we'll see if he's able to fight through that and be able to be the guy that people think and want him to be. I think he's very possible. I think the sky's the limit for this kid. I think he has all the talent in the world, and we'll see. We'll see what he develops into. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Is there any guys that you want on this list? Is there anybody that comes to mind? Is there any guys that I said I would trade for that you wouldn't trade for? Again, love to hear it. Let me know.